Okay, I just want to add a couple of things to my diatribe of yesterday when I was complaining about Bret Stephens. And that has to do with some of the more of this history. It's really a pet peeve of mine when someone says anybody who doesn't agree with Israel and what they're doing doesn't understand or know history. Now, I know a lot more of the history of this region than Bret Stephens apparently knows, because he started his history lesson when when Bill Clinton was president, and they were unable to put together this peace agreement with the Palestinians. No, Brett, it goes back a lot further than that. When I was young, we had. I spent some time in Israel, and the Roman army came in, and they just ran us all out of there, myself included. I don't know why they ran me out of there. I wasn't causing any problems, but Romans. So, circling back, let's talk about some history. It's just so that any of you are paying attention will have some understanding of what's going on in Israel, so that when you hear the news and you hear the arguments and you see this, all we see right now are people being slaughtered in Gaza. And the Israelis justifying it because, hey, they're hiding out among the civilians. That's their fault that we kill civilians. But his relevant history, if you just look at the news today, you would think that Israel includes Gaza, Israel includes Golan, and Israel includes the West Bank. Well, you know who says Israel includes all three of those? Well, the Israelis say that. The United States says that. Oh, and also East Jerusalem. All of Jerusalem. You know who doesn't say that? The rest of the world. The United Nations had never recognized East Jerusalem, Gaza, the West Bank, and Golan as part of Israel. Why is that? Because when Israel got the approval of the United Nations, it was a tiny country. It was basically supposed to be symbolic. And they were very careful to preserve the rights of the Muslim population in East Jerusalem, which was a sacred holy city for them, just as the rest of Jerusalem was supposedly a sacred holy city for the Jews. That was an important part of the UN resolution. Also, the West Bank was basically part of Jordan. Gaza was basically part of Egypt. If you look at the map, here's Israel right here, it's a little V. Over here to the left is the Gaza Strip. If you keep going a little further, what I see to the left, it's on the Mediterranean. You go a little bit right. What is the line between? What does the line for Gaza end? It ends at the Egyptian border. It was under Egyptian control and dominance. It was the United Nations considered to essentially be part of Egypt, not Israel. The West Bank, on the right side of the map as you're looking at it, that is furthest away, and it's not. This is confusing to you who watch this, because I know you're not that smart. You'd be doing something else with your time. So, the West Bank is on the it's on the east side of Israel. What? Then why don't they call it the East Bank if it's on the east side of Israel? You look at Israel, to the right is the east, to the left is the west. You go all the way to the right, and there it is. The West Bank on the east side. It's because, morons, it's the West Bank of the River Jordan, which is chilly and cold. And I got to tell you, I've been there. I've been swimming in that river, and it chills the body, but not the soul. Actually, it chills the soul too, but I don't want to get into those kind of details. But the River Jordan is chilly and cold. It chills the body, but not the soul. Hallelujah. I know, huh? I didn't know I had that tone, did you? Shut up, Francois. What the hell do dogs know about music anyway? Nothing, that's what they know. Nothing. In your case, you know even less than most dogs know. You howl? You consider that music? Howling at the moon? Ooh, howling at the moon. Let's go dance to Francois, howling at the moon. Yeah, I've heard you. So anyway, Francois, let's get back to what we were talking about, which is the history of Israel, about which you are woefully ignorant. So here we are. Here's Israel. Here's Francois sleeping. Now, because I told him I'm not going to listen to his stupid music anymore. So he closes his eyes and either pretends to be sleeping or he's really good at it. Could be a little of both. So the West Bank of the River Jordan, which is chilly and cold and chills the body but not the soul, that was not part of Israel. That was part of Jordan. How about Golan? Well, the Golan, so if I would talk about East Jerusalem, right? That was a very important city internationally. Very important that they protect the rights, the religious rights of the Jews and the Muslims. And Christians too. You know, it was big for Christians too. I'm not sure why, but it was. Oh, I think because Jesus he wasn't from there. He was born in Bethlehem, I believe, and it was an amazing birth. It was, fortunately they had cameras there. We wouldn't have known about these wise men. And what did Jesus ever do with that money that he got from the wise men? I mean, he got, by today's money, and I did a calculation, $2.1 billion worth of gold and myrrh and incense. And then we never heard another word about that money. I'm looking into this because I think it's hidden somewhere, probably in East Jerusalem, under some mosque. I don't even know if they're allowed to have mosques anymore. They're allowed to wear masks when they're stealing Jesus' fortune. But see, this is my imagination. But I could be right too, and you know it. We'll talk about this offline, because I've got some friends of mine who are somewhat disreputable reputations when it comes to stealing things. Yeah, I used to be a public defender. You make some good contacts in that job. Anyway, I'm starting to talk like Joe. What's his name? Biden. Yeah, that was his name. So notice, I'm already thinking of him as somebody who's gone, fluttered off into the wind, this frail little body. Oh, stop it, Ed. Don't be such a smartass. Okay. Oops, now you caught me talking to myself. West Bank, which is on the East Bank. Gaza, which is known for its strip joints. East Jerusalem. And Golan. Where was Golan? I know some people think it's a high school named Land, and everybody was cheering, saying, give me an L, give me an A, give me an N. Golan. No, that's not it. The Golan includes the Golan Heights, which are way up there, and which the Syrians used to have gun placements. Now, Israel has gun placements, but that was part of Syria. So in the 6-Day War, which I remember very well, sometimes it pays to be old. Okay, it never pays to be old. But sometimes you learn things, and if you remember them, you have some knowledge of history. And I remember the 6-Day War like it was yesterday, because my roommate, who was a big supporter of Israel, was running around the apartment saying, hey, we won. And I'm like, I don't know what you won exactly, but, who am I, right? You're my roommate, and I love you, so yeah, me too. And he's still a good friend of mine. So I just went to his 800th birthday party the other day. 800 years old he is. He was old when we were in Moscow. So, but it was a 6-day war, 6 days. And at the end of the 6 days, Israel ended up occupying and claiming to own Gaza, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, actually all of Golan, which include the Golan Heights, and get this, East Jerusalem. So how does that compare? So that almost doubled Israel in size in terms of habitable part, ignoring the Gobi Desert below, which is really uninhabitable. I spent I got one of these free vacation packages one time, and it was to, the Gobi Desert. Go figure. Well, I did get a good tan. So when you look at the habitable part of Israel, they basically doubled in size. So Israel recognizes it. For some reason, we do. When I say we, I'm not including me, I don't. But the rest of the world, including the United Nations, has constantly been condemning Israel, particularly every time they move more settlers into these regions, to make it really clear that they're going to control it. Now, where they don't have settlers right now is in Gaza. So when they talk about, Siemens talks and other people say, well, Israel tried to make peace and offered to give an autonomous government to the Arabs on the two-party solution to the West Bank and Gaza, leaving out the fact that Israel refused to let there be a land bridge between those two, so that Israel still maintained guards and gates and everything else, so that they could control basically that landmass. And that's what they're doing in Gaza. And one of the things historically, Brett, that's led up to this whole explosion and this horrible attack by Hamas, but what led up to it was Israel basically treating Gaza like a big open air prison, a concentration camp. And it's the most crowded country, or whatever you want to call it, in the world. Gaza City is probably the most densely packed city in the world. And those people were trapped in there. They're not allowed in or out. They're not allowed to go out on the water. They're not allowed to travel in. If they're going to, if some of them were working in Israel, they have to go to the guards to the gates and wait there for hours to go each way. Most of the people there are unemployed, barely surviving. The only way they're able to survive is because they get food packages coming in from the rest of the world. So it's a horrible situation for those people because Israel has claimed it as its own, a place that the rest of the world does not acknowledge as being part of Israel. So I'm just bringing that up because most of you, I'm sure, don't know that much about the history of Israel. And then you get somebody like Brett out there and other people, supporters of Israel, selectively pointing to this or that and saying, see, if you don't understand history. Well, I understand history. Because I'm so old. I've lived through much of history, and I remember it. I remember when the United Nations approved Israel as a country. I remember that. Truman was president at the time. I remember Eisenhower had trouble with Israel. I remember when Israel in conjunction with, I think it was England and France, tried to seize the Suez Canal. And they would have succeeded, except Eisenhower, who didn't do a lot of, he squandered a lot of opportunities as president. But that is one thing he did. He stood up to Israel and said, get out of there. Now, how was he able to do that? Because even then, especially then, I guess, Israel depended on its very existence on American financial aid and American military aid. Their entire Air Force came from the United States. Almost all their tanks, almost all of their arms come from the United States. And Eisenhower simply said, what a lot of people are telling Biden to do, he said, no mas for you. Get out of there. He did. So, but it's just a constant turmoil going on in that area. And all of it as a result of Israel. Before the Israelis started moving there, and like I said yesterday, it goes back to 1860 with the Suez Canal. But in modern times, it really goes back to the beginning of Zionism. And really, and that was going on during World War II. And it was one of the reasons that, shamefully, a lot of the Arab countries were supporting the Nazis. And I know a lot about that, as I do about a lot of things, because my parents were stationed in Algiers. Dad was a bomber navigator, Mom was a captain in the Red Cross, and she was a translator, and that's how they met. So they've told me a lot of stories, and a lot of the real animosity toward Jews in the Arab world well predates 1948. Goes back to, really when World War II really started going up in full force, and Jews started flocking in there from different parts of the world, and then the Zionist thing came into being, and all of a sudden people were saying, "This is ours. We're entitled to this land," and it just infuriated the Arabs because they're saying, "Wait, that's our land. That's not your land. You're Arab. You're a foreign people. You're not Arabic as we are, as your ancestors were. You're a bunch of white Europeans coming over here and telling us that you're entitled to come in and take this land away from us and shove us out of here." And it infuriated them, and so there was a lot of actually pro-Nazi sentiment, unfortunately, in the Arab world during World War II. And then when World War II was over, the whole thing began accelerating, particularly in 1947 was when it was really exploding. And then 1948, and then on forward, there's been nothing but controversy about that part of the country. And as I said yesterday, I'd like to see, eventually what will happen is Israel will be determined by the world to have been a failed experiment. And what they're going to do is they're not going to exterminate the Jews, they're going to, because we can stop that. The rest of the world can stop and make sure that doesn't happen, and then begin the relocation of Jews back to often, where their ancestors came from, many of whom came from the United States of America. And they left to go build a whatever, ideologically driven homeland in the Middle East, they should come back here. They should come back home. This is your home, Jews, Irish, English, Jamaican. I don't care what you are. This is your ideological home, because this is the beauty of America. It was founded on ideals, not race, not gender, and certainly didn't include dogs, Francois. So, but it was founded on a vision of a world where people could come here and make it on their merits, and it didn't matter what their religion, it didn't matter their race, it didn't matter their background. This is your homeland. And people from around the world have considered America to be their homeland for a long time. So let them come home. Let the Jews in Israel and their families, let them come back to the United States. And others are going to want to go to other places. But there's no reason they have to stay there in that country. And if the rest of the world comes together on it, you can have a peaceful transition. And eventually you're going to have that, because eventually the United States, particularly these younger generations, are going to get sick and tired of writing checks to Israel. They're going to say no mas. And this could happen right around the corner, because we don't know what's going to happen between Israel and Iran. But if Israel foolishly keeps tweaking Iran, they can find themselves in a war against Lebanon, against Syria, against Iran now, and whoever is left alive in Golan, all coming together and attacking Israel, and there's no way that Israel by itself can withstand that attack. They don't have a monopoly on air forces anymore like they did in 1967, Iran is not a superpower. It's, in the region, it's a superpower, and it has nuclear weapons. So Israel doesn't even dare threaten nuclear weapons anymore. So we don't know. I shouldn't say they have nuclear weapons. They either have them and they're almost ready to have them. But and I blame Trump for that. We had an agreement. They were living up to it. They were dismantling their nuclear reactors, and then Trump comes in and says the whole deal is off. And at which point in time Iran said, well, okay, then we're just going to go ahead with our nuclear project, and they have. And they've either succeeded in having weapons-grade plutonium, or they're really, really close to it. So it's a dangerous situation. And if Israel is not careful, they could find themselves in a war, an existential war with Iran and all these others. And if that happens, then the United States will have to come in order for Israel to survive. We will have to go in, and we have warships positioned there right now for this purpose. But if Biden says, look, I told you, Israel, not to do this, you're on your own, then that pretty much would be the end of Israel. Because whether Israel has a right to exist or whether or not Israel has a right to defend itself, everybody knows that right now Israel does not have the ability to defend itself against Iran, Syria, and Lebanon. It does not have the ability to do that. They would be destroyed. They would be in Armageddon. Which, incidentally, I believe Armageddon is a vacant lot somewhere in Israel. But we don't need to get into that now. I'm not in the real estate business right now. So, what I'm saying is that's how precarious the existence of Israel is as we speak right now. And all it would take would be for the United States to send the word out, we're not going to get involved. Israel's on its own. That'd be the end of Israel. The end. So, at some point in time, either we're going to get sucked into a major confrontation in the Middle East, which I don't think anybody here wants, or wiser heads will prevail. And incidentally, it doesn't necessarily have to follow that Israel has to cease to exist as a country. It could still exist if it's willing to go back to its internationally recognized borders and stop trying to expand itself and supporting settlements moving into Golan and moving into the West Bank. And all these are considered illegal by the rest of the world except the United States. We constantly disapprove it, but we don't do anything about it. So there is a deal that could be worked out, but it would require UN forces to monitor it. The United States would have to become heavily involved in it. Israel would have to be told they have to make major sacrifices, and then they could exist. And hopefully, eventually, they could some peace could develop in that area. But as long as Israel is taking and occupying Gaza and treating those people horribly, settlers running amok in the West Bank, deliberately driving Arabs out of their homes there and off of their land, and Netanyahu's sitting back chuckling while it's going on. We've got people in Golan, and they get a kick out. They're talking about when this rocket hit up in Golan just the other day, and Israel has not taken. Well, Israel did take a position. They said basically that Syria was attacking and killing Israeli children. Well, they call them Israeli children, but the rest of the world doesn't, because those are Syrians that were living there that were killed. Those are Syrian kids. Yeah? They're Druze. Not Jews, not Israelis. They're not Israeli citizens, except that Israel says they are, because Israel said, well, that's our land, we took it. And now they're really upset about the fact that a bunch of Israeli settlers who shouldn't have had no business being in Golan anyway have been forced to flee because of the rocket attacks that are going on over there. And yeah, I'm sure they don't like that. But that doesn't mean that people legitimately there are being legitimately shoved out of their homes. Those people moved in there and shoved the people who were there legitimately out of their homes. So, and I have no dog in this race or horse in this hunt or whatever the hell that expression is. Yeah, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Arab. Yeah, and I, like most people, I supported, one of the reasons Americans support Israel is because most of us have lots of Jewish friends. And guess what the Israelis look like? They look like us because they're Europeans. So there's a natural inclination to have an affinity for something that is important to our friends. That's why I would never argue about Israel with any of my Jewish friends. I wouldn't want to upset them. But that doesn't change the fact that the facts are what they are. And when I look at the facts and I look at the history and I try to look at them objectively, I think Israel has behaved just horrendously from a moral basis. And I'm viewing this from my perspective based on morality, fairness, decency, without regard to whom I like or dislike. And so I have strong views about it, but they're views that are based on, in my opinion, an objective reality. And so, but the good news is, because there's always good news, the good news is I'm done. Bye.